It's hard not to be romantic about podcasting. Moneyball coming up next.
Haven't Seen It with Tim Sestito and Tommy Tevene. Hello, everybody. Welcome on in. Thank you all so much for listening today. This is a podcast where one of us is watching a movie for the very first time. And today that is Tommy. Tommy,
Yeah.
you've never seen Moneyball before, not surprising at all, given your love for the game of baseball.
Yeah. Half this movie, I was like, what are they talking about? Was hitting a ball? What?
Yeah, but we're not joined alone here. We also have upstairs Steve, several time guest of the podcast, and Mike Beck joining us. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Good to be back, boys.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, a little inside baseball here. My audio is having issues, so they've just been patiently waiting for me to get my audio working somehow. We got it working, but I appreciate their patience here.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note that we're all kind of flying off the seat of our pants here. I'm currently driving to Boston. This was one of those things where we've had to schedule and reschedule this podcast at least 3 times. And it was even to the point where I had suggested, you know what, can we do next Thursday? And then it's just no, let's just do it tomorrow. Fuck it. And I'm fine. We're doing it tomorrow. That I don't know how I'm going to see this movie because I'm actually kind of stealing Tommy's friend Will's HBO account, or I guess it would
Thank
be
you
his
for
brother.
thank you for broadcasting it.
Thank you for broadcasting.
Well, it's all right. It's his brother. It's all right. He knows. Listen, at the end of the day, we're locked out, so I had to kind of fly off the seat of my pants to see this movie anyway. So I'm up in rural New Hampshire, and we passed this video store, and me and my friend walk in. We're like, "Please, do you have Moneyball?" And we got on DVD for $5, and we ended up watching it yesterday because I hadn't seen it either, believe it or not. Which is
really
actually the weirder thing. Yeah, no, this is my first time seeing Moneyball, and I'm a big baseball fan, so it's a little shocking.
So you watched the streaming version or the DVD version?
I watched the DVD version.
You act like it would be so hard to rent the movie on YouTube or Amazon. You could have easily gone through that instead of this whole hoop of going to New Hampshire.
But you know what? You know what it is that my friend Blake, who was actually on the podcast with us for Good Will Hunting, he has this thing where he likes to own tangible items. So
yeah, I feel that.
We found the movie, and here I sit thinking that I'm going to buy it and take it home with me. And he's like, "No, this is mine. I want it." And I'm like, "Okay, Blake, you can buy it. It's yours."
The DVD copy of Moneyball.
Yeah.
You can have. I don't know if you know your friend Tommy, Steve, but he also likes to collect physical media. So
you can see right behind me that bookshelf is just DVDs, practically.
Makes sense.
Mike, so had you ever seen Moneyball before?
I'd seen it a couple times over the last couple of years. The funny thing is, though, I hadn't seen this movie when it came out. It came out 2011, I want to say.
Yeah.
And it took me about a decade to watch it. It was one of those movies, I think you see a lot of clips of it on YouTube and stuff like that. So I had only just come around to seeing it about 2 years ago. And through my job, I started doing all these, I'm not a baseball fan, but through my job, I started doing these baseball related projects. So for whatever reason, I decided to watch it and just really impressed with it. But this is really only a couple of years ago. It was the first time I saw it.
All right. Yeah. I definitely didn't see it when it came out. I think I saw it for the first time when it hit Netflix in 2014 or whatever it was. And it's one of those movies that's almost an annual rewatch for me. If it's ever on a streamer that I'm currently on, it's one of those. I haven't watched Moneyball in a while. Why not throw it on? It's a rainy summer day. It's baseball season. Let's throw it on.
There's one thing I'll say about the movie. It works great as a rainy day movie. The score is so melancholic and everything like that. It just really hits you in that way. I watched this on a rainy day. I woke up at 8 a.m. before we started recording just to watch this movie because that's how dedicated I guess I am. Yeah, I had to set an alarm and be like, oh, I guess I gotta go watch Moneyball right now. That's how much we care about this podcast. So,
It's an easy watch.
the fact that it's rainy right now, I was like, this really hits. I've seen parts and bits and pieces of this before, but like it seems like almost all this movie takes place on like a cloudy day, like overcast or whatever.
Yeah, and that kind of summarizes the Oakland A's in perpetuity. We'll dive more into that later. So gentlemen, the way we like to kick things off is what's a movie you've gone and seen recently? Not Moneyball, anything else? Tommy, I'm gonna kick it off to you. You
Okay.
give the example. You're my star student. Come on.
Yeah. So I'm the star pupil right here. I'm the one that gets on base. I don't know, like 50% of the time. Is that good?
Tommy, if you
It's
go on
always
base
first
50% of
base,
the time, you're Barry Bonds, and that's it. So it's pretty good.
Yeah.
yeah, right there. You see, I know my stats. So when we were originally about to record this last week, I was going to do a Brad Pitt double feature, so I decided to watch Seven, which I haven't seen in forever. David Fincher's modern classic right there, and just like what's in the box, I'm still not sure. But overall, Brad Pitt's like Seven, just like great performance right there. It was good to see like young Pitt and how much more twitchy and like nervy he was compared to watching Moneyball, was kind of a little less twitchy, a little like more, I guess, restrained in some ways. But overall, just amazing. Kevin Spacey, great. A spoiler that he's in the movie, but Morgan Freeman also just great seeing another detective movie. We're gonna be covering Saw soon, and Timmy, you'll see Saw as like a Seven ripoff in some ways, but great classic. Seven, that is.
Both of them.
Yeah.
You still don't know what's in the box, Tommy?
No, I know it's in the box.
Tom. I was.
I don't know with you. You've played that so straight.
Yeah, you really did sound serious. I've seen this movie a bunch of times. I still don't know what's in the box. Well, I mean, I don't know how many times you got to pay attention to this movie, Tommy, but it's pretty obvious what's in the box.
Yeah, what's in the box is pretty obvious. I guess we'll spoil it at this point. Gwyneth Paltrow's head, but they don't show it, which is always shocking. But overall, love that movie and just great. Also, great rated movie, apparently.
All right, Steve,
There
what's
you
a
go.
movie you've seen recently?
I saw Lord of War for the first time. Have you guys seen that at all?
Is that the Nicolas Cage one?
That's the Nicolas Cage one with Jared Leto, and he's a gun runner, and it's based off of actual events. I looked into it. Turns out like the character that he plays was like an actual person that like kind of funded guns for like African, Asian, and like Russian like trade to like fuel wars, whether they be like internal or external wars, and it was a very, very good movie. I was kind of walking into it expecting it to be like just more of a silly. I mean, it's absolutely quality. It had all the elements of Nicolas Cage, which also helped. So
He's always great.
Not to
Whenever
spoil
he
too
is.
much from there.
Yeah, I still haven't seen it, but
If you guys haven't seen it, I won't spoil.
Yeah,
you guys should do that one on the pod. It's a good one.
So this is in terms of cage scale, is this a manic cage or just like restraint cage?
Definitely not manic cage. This is like straight to business cage. But you have manic Jared Leto, and Jared Leto's his little brother in this movie. So he's kind of acting as sort of a guide for him, whereas like he's like the successful older brother in the family, and he's like the brother's kind of riding on his coattails, but he keeps getting himself caught up in drugs and women of the night, whatever have you, that's preventing him from doing that. So like I said, you'll have to dive in to find out more. But it's a really good movie nonetheless, and it's based off of actual events. So
Number 4, we'll keep it on the docket. Mike, what about you? Any movie you've seen recently?
So one movie I saw recently was The Last Voyage of the Demeter. I was traveling for work, and so I was like, I'll see this movie. It's in the theaters, like why not? Because it looked interesting. Not something I'd necessarily recommend. It was kind of like Dracula meets Alien was the theme for that they were going for. It's got Liam Cunningham in it, who was from Game of Thrones, who who I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
did a pretty good job as like the captain of the ship.
Captain
But
and
otherwise,
Game
I mean,
of
it was somewhat it was kind of somewhat forgettable in that sense. It had a lot of potential. That
Yeah.
combination be kind of cool of Dracula and Alien and everything like that. But it was just kind of a I don't know, pulpy summer film, if you will. I was the
Yeah.
only one in the theater.
That kind of tracks because that movie
Nice.
really bombed at the box office. It was like the
I
Dracula
think I was
on
the
a
only,
yeah. You're the only one that bought tickets to it, apparently.
pretty much.
Look, it's a Mike Beck supported podcast. That's it specifically. Our movie, I mean, Mike Beck exclusively supports.
No, you know what it gets? It gets
$7 in ticket sales.
me and Mike have been friends for quite a while. We've actually invented something called the Mike Beck seal of approval. I would say that this does or does not,
Did not
get the
get it.
Mike Beck seal of approval. That did not make the cut.
Did not make it.
Didn't make the cut. It sounded like a cool concept, but yeah, apparently it was just like a bore from what I've heard.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was like
Also-
30 minutes too long, at least. It
Oh,
was-
that's the worst. That's the worst when you're looking at down at your watch at a movie. That's even worse when it's a 90-minute movie too, and you're looking down at your watch like, how long is this dang thing? And you're like, it's only been an hour. My God. But
I think it was almost 2 hours. Had no business being that long.
oh boy, that's brutal. One of the movies I saw recently, I went back into the theaters for an exclusive re-release window of The Dark Knight. They re-released Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Rises. I chose The Dark Knight to go see because that's my favorite of the trilogy easily. And oh boy,
That's how Batman Begins.
that movie still slaps so goddamn hard. That movie's so good. It's such a good movie.
Yeah,
I
it's
saw that
no one's
shit
best.
in
I think.
theaters like 4 times. I think when it came out.
Yeah, I remember it's one of those pivotal like movie like in theater experiences for me as a kid. Like I was like 14, 15 when it came out, and they like I couldn't get tickets for 3 weeks, and I was sitting like 4 rows from the front like 3 weeks into its release because that's how just gigantic The Dark Knight was, and like just having chills. And I was like, oh my God, they can make like an action movie like interesting and good and have like all these morals come together, because I still have the same feeling I had leaving that theater today than I did when I was like 15, is that like the movie kind of just comes together in the last 20 minutes, and like all those through lines like Harvey Dent and the Joker and the mob like comes together, and the Joker just reducing Harvey Dent to nothing and undoing all the work that had been done in the movie. And I liked that the way that came in. And I mean, Heath Ledger's Joker is like arguably the most iconic performance of the 21st century.
Oh yeah, easily. He
Definitely the best Joker. Definitely the best Joker.
you're not a fan of Jared Leto?
Let me tell you something. Jared Leto's Joker was being a little bit of a tryhard. Joaquin Phoenix, though, I love that Joker. What are you guys thinking? What are you guys thinking of the new one? You happy with the fact that it's going to be a musical? Yes, no. You think
it'll be interesting? I mean, I'm glad they're not just riffing on fucking Scorsese again in Joker 2. But we'll see how it ends up. But like Lady Gaga, I think could be good casting for Harley Quinn. But I mean, like Heath Ledger all day. I mean, Jack Nicholson is good, but he's just played himself in that movie essentially. It's like, what if Jack Nicholson was the Joker? That's all it is. It's not an actual performance. It's just like,
I mean, it's
Jack Nicholson would be like,
it's great.
It's great. But yeah, it's not like
there's gonna be some old heads. There's gonna be some old heads that you mad at that take, Tommy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. When we're
that
friends,
was
gonna text us.
Because I still even remember.
Hey man, if Jack Nicholson wasn't Joker, Heath Ledger wouldn't have been inspired, man. Then that would have been it for you.
Yeah. Cancel because my Batman.
Show some respect to your elders. Speaking of showing respect to your elders, that's a big theme of baseball in and of itself, of respecting the past and the heritage of the game.
What a fucking transition that was.
And this,
you really reached into your back pocket there, didn't you, Timmy?
This is Moneyball.
I need more money. We're a small market team. Fine players are the money that we do have.
there's a championship team that we could afford because everyone else undervalues them, like an island of misfit toys.
We're gonna shake things up. You don't put a team together with a computer.
Billy Beane is trying to reinvent a system that's been working for years.
I say it's just getting started.
What is happening in Oakland?
It defies everything we know about baseball.
Just plain crazy.
All right. So Moneyball, Mike, I didn't get from you. So you no wait, you had seen this movie. I did ask. So for Tommy and Steve, your first time seeing this, and Steve, I'm interested in both of your perspectives. No, because Steve's a baseball fan. Tommy is like a blank slate. It's like if it's not Mario baseball, he doesn't know it.
Yeah.
So Steve, with you first as a baseball fan, how did this movie land for you?
I think that it landed really well. Like I actually thought that I would hate it more because a lot of I'm a Yankee fan, so a lot of people were saying to me like, you really got to take it with a grain of salt because they really aspire to be like what like the Red Sox are going to be in 2003, and they're kind of using George Steinbrenner's tactics on playing the game and like acquiring as many like good players for the most amount of money as possible, and they really kind of shit on the Yankees sort of business model in that regard. And I'm like watching it and I'm like, no, I think it's a really good story. I think that it shows you that you don't really need to have that in order to like create this amazing baseball team. And being a Yankee fan, there have been countless times where I've been looking at the contracts that the Yankees have been putting through, like, look at fucking A-Rod, like how much money we put into that fucking guy and how much did we really fucking get out of him, you know?
You got a lot out of him. You got a lot out of him.
We did get a lot out of him, but I mean, like, that was the highest contract in fucking baseball, and he was one fucking player at the end of the day, you know what I mean? And like, I think it was remarkable just the way that they played the whole game, and like, did. I mean, as far as I was concerned, I didn't really know that happened back in 2002. I was busy kind of crying over not winning the World Series against the Diamondbacks
the 50th time.
prior. So.
Oh, poor little Yankee fan just coming off 4 World Series in 5 years.
You're talking to Timmy, the guy who's like, "What's a championship?" I've never seen one.
So, Tommy, you're like a Jets fan. I really don't want to hear it.
I'm barely a Jets fan. Let's be honest.
Exactly. So, Tommy, as somebody who despises the sport of baseball, what did you think of this movie?
So, as a baseball illiterate person, I didn't understand the stats, but I think overall, like the overall emotion of this film still really hit, and I think their performances carried over. There apparently was a version of this movie that was going to be made with Steven Soderbergh directing and Dimitri Martin playing the Jonah Hill role, but like actually the guy Peter DaCosta. And apparently they canceled that movie because Steven Soderbergh's script was going to be way too baseball heavy, like in terms of like just like almost like a documentary.
Oh, really?
Where it'd be like an abundance of baseball details, and like someone like me who hates baseball would be like, all right, fuck this movie. Like, I don't need to go over like the line by line item.
Over batting. Do we need to go over batting averages for you, Tommy?
Yeah, exactly.
Or on base percentage, which is a pretty like straightforward statistic.
Well, yeah, that was fine, but apparently like the Steve Soderbergh version just has to be bogged down details, and like instead of having Chris Pratt as Scott Hatterberg, it would have been like actually Scott Hatterberg playing himself, and it's just like
woof.
And then like David Justice played himself too, so it's just like I think the version we got was a lot better. It was accessible to someone that does not like baseball at all.
But what about Spike Jones playing fucking what's it called? Brad Pitt's wife's fucking new husband.
Oh yeah.
Anyone else notice that?
He was good. He was good.
That was a little cameo in there. That's a nice scene. That scene is so awkward. It's just, and not in like an uncomfortable way. It's just like, this is how uncomfortable and awkward this would be if you had to wait to pick up your daughter at your ex-wife's husband's house now. And the guy doesn't follow baseball. It would be like having a conversation with Tommy, like Giambino. Oh, I'm sorry. You lost Giambino. Yeah. It's like I don't want to be having this conversation with you at all.
No.
And for Mike, this is your third or fourth time seeing it. What kind of impact did it have on you? Any details that stuck out to you?
I mean, one of the things that what I think you get from like what Steve and Tommy were both saying is that even if you are a baseball fan or somebody that doesn't care about it at all, it's I think it's a broadly interesting movie because it really goes beyond kind of goes beyond sport in a lot of ways. It doesn't go too heavy into the metrics part of the game in a lot of ways. It really focuses, I think, on a character drama with Brad Pitt and his not only his struggles in like formulating this baseball team and implementing the new philosophy, but kind of his struggles as a person and a character with his kind of his fraught relationship and also his own personal choices and the regret of if he did the right thing. And I think that's something that a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but people can relate to that as a story more than just baseball itself. And I don't consider myself like a big baseball fan, and so it doesn't focus too much on just baseball action and the sport component of it. So I think a lot of people can kind of get into it, regardless of how you feel about baseball in general.
Well, and that's
that's where I would say it appealed to me.
Well, and that's interesting because it's one of those things that I think I think this is a great movie. But some of the criticisms that have been laid about it is that this movie doesn't like complete the full picture. Like the sabermetrics, the advanced analytics, the on base percentage that have been brought in by their prior GM Sandy Alderson in like the late 80s. Like he started using these statistics and like that on base percentage. So this wasn't just like some vast shift. And like Peter Brand, Jonah Hill's character, he started in Cleveland, but he had been at Oakland for a couple of years.
Peter Brand doesn't exist as a character.
Well, I know, but he's based off.
He's a composite.
He's a composite, and it makes sense because I think in the way that you need to structure the story, because sabermetrics are boring, and it's like, and like all the nerds are like pushing for it, and they wonder why people don't like general fans don't want to watch baseball anymore. It's like, oh, because you're talking like, you just need to have a degree in statistics to understand the game, but like. It just makes it better, and it's like, okay, probably not.
Apparently, Peter DaCosta was originally going to be played by, like I said, Demetri Martin, and then once like Jonah Hill was cast, DaCosta or whatever said like, I don't want this to be my character anymore. This doesn't look like me. This isn't me. He probably said like, I don't want fat ass Jonah Hill playing me in this fucking movie.
I miss fat Jonah Hill, but the other thing that. And this is the one that I think is a very valid criticism. It acts like the 2002 Oakland A's are the 2022-2023 Oakland A's who literally shed all of their stars, all of their bones. Like Giambi was a great player, Damon was a good player, Isringhouse solid player. The 2002 Oakland A's had the AL Cy Young, so that means they won. That was the best pitcher in the American League. And the American League MVP in Miguel Tejada. Neither of those players' names are mentioned at all throughout the entire movie, which I think is a very valid criticism of it. And it acts like Hatteberg and David Justice are really the two that like turn it around. Like Scott Hatteberg was like the sixth or seventh best player on it. Now, baseball is a team sport, and it often does come down to those depth pieces that you have that contribute. And I think in terms of a narrative and a story structure, like you kind of need that and just focus on particular guys and like just doing it off the acquisitions to explain the concept behind Moneyball makes a whole lot more sense.
Is that why you think that they chose to like omit them from the script?
Yes.
Do you think that it's like it would make for a better story if we said, oh, we also didn't have the best pitcher and MVP in baseball at the time? It would kind of like, make it that much more great.
Cut the dramatic tension right there. I mean, there's when watching this movie, it almost like you felt like they're like the Bad News Bears, where it's just like, oh, we're this ragtag group of misfits that we all suck. But in reality,
they're dancing in the clubhouse when they're losing and shit like that.
Yeah.
But What a great scene right there. Just Brad Pitt just taking the bat, just destroying the fucking speaker.
Well, that's the thing with this movie is it has so many great scenes that it just like for me ultimately as a movie fan and a big baseball fan, like the omissions of stuff doesn't really bother me too much at all. Like I know there's people who probably just more of baseball fans watching it being like, oh well, you didn't really get the whole pieces, and for me that doesn't really bother me. Because like it's interesting, like the way it starts, like with the scouts, right? And like they're all a bunch of old dudes. Like I love that scene where they're just like, he's got a good face, he's got a strong face, but he doesn't have he doesn't have a good looking girlfriend. Like he doesn't pass the confidence test. Like this is how these guys scouted for.
My favorite is that test of like the girlfriend test. I feel like that guy used that philosophy for his whole life, where he's just like, is your girlfriend hot? Then you have confidence. That's it. Everything else applies to anything else in life.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is there is a conversation in the book about that, but it was about they drafted a player and they weren't sure he was going to sign because he had a girlfriend. So that's what the conversation ultimately revolved around. It wasn't really a confidence test, but I thought it made for a much funnier scene, and just showing like it was a great way to showcase like how old school baseball was kind of done for like basically 100 years, how they figured out who these guys were, because it was basically off the eye test. And they did a good job with Billy Beane and explaining like his past in baseball and how he was one of those goods. It was a really great way of like getting you emotionally invested into Billy Beane's character and why he would want to make that change from like this eye test, because he had been the kid at the table, promised the world, and it didn't come to fruition for him.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I think it like kind of stands to reason that we talk about what happened with like Billy Beane, so to speak. So he ended up turning down he ended up turning down going to Stanford. Yeah. And then ended up taking the money and going to play baseball. But what ended up happening was he really didn't become the star that
he was a bad baseball.
He would be.
He was a bad baseball player.
Yeah. He was on the Mets, right?
He was on the Mets from 1984 to 1985. Talk about not the.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, he missed
like right before they won the championship,
the World Series, like on one of the most infamous baseball teams of all time. Like he just missed it right there. And there's actually a funny line in there too, where they like right when he comes up, they're like, if I'm picking between him or Darryl Strawberry, I'm taking Billy Beane every day. And I'm like, oh, well, the announcer got that one wrong. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I think what's cool about it is that, and he even says at the end, like, I made a decision based off of money before. I'm not doing it again. And then Jonah Hill says, you're not making this decision off money here. And I think that really kind of shows his growth just within the, league and like, transitioning from being like, the player's coach to the player's general manager to an organizational general manager,
Yeah, absolutely. That was the other thing they said wasn't accurate. Like Billy Beane doesn't walk around the clubhouse and like coach these guys on these statistics on what they should do. But again, these are for like dramatic impacts. I think most people like understand that. There is one person who was very, very upset about their portrayal in this movie, and that was manager Art Howe, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. Art Howe was actually on board with the whole Moneyball thing. But him and Billy Beane like kind of butt heads like off of it, and this is based off of Billy Beane's retelling of the story from the book Moneyball, and this is where they got the portrayal. But Art Howe like has like a whole speech, but to like condense it, he was like, yeah, like nobody reached out to me, nobody did anything, like I felt like I was very unfairly portrayed. And if you ask the actual players from that team, they're like, I love Art Howe, like he was a kind man, just genuinely like even keeled, like was not about the money at all. Like that whole thing was added for dramatic effect. Art Howe also had another year on his contract. So he was like, yeah, I would never walk through the halls of the clubhouse and be like, Billy, we need to talk about my contract. He's like, my agent would do that. I would have nothing to do with that at all.
Yeah, literally like having him sit players down, being like, hey, you're going to Philly now. I was just like, there's no way that this is actually how it goes down. This can't be.
No, and
You know,
Art would be the one telling a guy he got cut or got traded or got sent down. That would be Art's job. That like Billy wouldn't do that. But again, you're focusing on Billy Bean's perspective on things. You need him to be the one doing it for the movie to.
And I think they need to make him. They had to make him appear like back against the wall, where he's getting eviscerated by the media. He's at odds with the coach, the players, the scouting staff. I think it builds to the appeal of what he's doing and like the gravitas of he's trying to innovate with this new philosophy change, and so he's got to battle everybody, regardless of whether that actually happened, in reality.
Yeah, I feel like in a movie like this, you need to take some dramatic license. I mean, this movie would have been boring as hell if it was just like phone calls to the agent, where the agent just like tells the player like, "Hey, you got traded." It's just some random Joe Schmo, like nobody actor. Like we need to see Brad Pitt tell himself like, "Hey, you've been traded. Good luck." And I like the trade montage of like Jonah Hill in the beginning of the movie not understanding like how to cut a player, and when he does it to a player, he's like, "I'm sorry." Jonah Hill just gave a great performance here.
Also, in this movie, just rewatching it last night, so many scenes that are just like, like this is a great scenes movie. It's a great YouTube clips movie of just like watching clips of it on YouTube, like going back into it because like so many of them hit. I really love like that scene where it's that or the trade deadline where they're going for Ricardo Rincon, the relief pitcher, and he's on the phone. He's like,
"Oh, I love that,"
and he's like, hangs up. He's like, "Once you get the answer you want, hang up."
Yeah,
like
just good sales tactic.
So
and the best is like it's a trade deadline. He's calling like 3 or 4 separate managers at a time, and then he's just telling. He's like, "First person that calls me back is getting the deal." So. Like, think about it.
It reminded me of like Wolf of Wall Street type energy of just like very manic, high intensity energy right there. It's like, and I love that they finally showed the secretary at the end because at the beginning of the movie is just like you just hear a voice be like on line 2, this guy, and then they showed at one point just like a quick shot of her just smirking.
That was great too. So for you guys, what are some of the other highlights, standout scenes? Mike, like what's a scene that just kind of stood out to you as just a great scene? Like I could watch this over and over again.
The ones you mentioned are fantastic. I also like the scene where, and this is definitely done for dramatic effect, where Billy Bean calls Jonah Hill character like in the middle of the night, and he's drinking, and he asks him to level with him, like ask him where would you take me in the draft, and instead of giving him like the yes man answer of where he actually was drafted, he knows exactly where he was drafted and where he would have actually taken him. It's a cool moment because it just shows like he's willing to give him the truth that I think in some respects he felt he was denied for so long. And to actually just level with them. So I think that's a great moment right there. And then it's revealed like, oh, I bought this analyst from the Cleveland Indians. I don't think that's a thing that actually happens, but I think it's a cool scene.
It's a great scene. It's condensing, building up that department into one person and compartmentalizing it. Like it makes sense. Like we don't need 5 guys in there.
We could have had the building the team montage like in Oppenheimer, where it's just like, oh, this guy, but that would have been like too much. And like the movie makes it seem like Brad Pitt, Billy Bean does that like every night to like Jonah Hill, just calls him drunk as fuck. It's like, where do you take me? Like, tell me again. What's your answer this time? Come on, like I wasn't that bad, was I?
Yeah. Are you sure 9th round? Are you sure about that 9th round?
Come on. I was more than 9th round, wasn't I?
So I think another good Steve, what's a scene for you that stood out? First watch.
So one thing that I think is worth mentioning is there's the scene where he's in the guitar store with his daughter, and the daughter's like afraid to sing in front of him, and then she sings that one song, which I think the actress that sang it knocked it out of the park. It's a very heartwarming sort of scene, and it's a good song. But as it turns out, I think that that's one of those things that like kind of creates like sort of a loophole in the story, because that song was apparently written in 2003, and this movie is set in 2002.
All right.
So this is one of those like really small loopholes where if you're a giant nerd like I am, and I was like, this song hadn't come out yet. Like it's like one of those like Marty from Back to the Future essentially writing Johnny Be Good, right?
Zero out of 5. This movie's trash, garbage.
Yeah, not
it was good to the final, to the credits.
Yeah, just saying, guys.
Steve hears that song, he's like, "Fuck this movie, fuck this bullshit."
I don't even know what happens at the end. I shut it off for like immediately after. So.
Once you heard that song, you're like, I can't watch this bullshit. Hollywood, dramatic fake news.
Clearly not historically accurate. This is bullshit.
I think that the performance of his daughter was really good. I mean, like they didn't focus on a ton, but just enough to like really show like the guy's like heart and like his family life right there, and just brings a little bit more of emotional throw for someone that doesn't like baseball. That's what hit a lot in this movie. Yeah, it was just like the family scenes, or like seeing Chris Pratt's family right when he's about to get like signed on to the Oakland A's. Of just how they focus on him a little bit more.
And how it's hinged, like he's not getting any offers. Like nobody wants to sign this guy. Like the wife's sitting at the tables, and I love that they don't even say it too, but she's very clearly like looking at bills. Like it's meant to be that kind of dynamic. Like how the hell are we gonna make money if he's not playing baseball anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That just like it just had that energy in the room before they walk in, which was great. And yeah, like the stuff with the daughter and like her being worried about his job, being like, I go on the internet, I see things. He's like, don't go on the internet, and that's great advice for everybody. Don't go on the internet. Yeah. It's a bad place.
Yeah, it's all words for us to live by. Yeah, don't go on the internet. Don't read. Don't listen to people.
Yeah,
no, be my daughter.
And the emotional through line with the daughter, it's like not even 5 minutes of the movie, if that, but it's just enough to show you, what motivates him, what gets him going. And then there was the great scene we mentioned before with Robin Wright and Spike Jonze in there as the ex-husband. Like it just showed that dynamic of like the only thing he really has outside of this team is his daughter. That's what matters most to him.
Definitely.
Another scene I like in it, it's a short one, is when Billy Beane goes to talk to David Justice. And he's, at that point, most of the team's basically kind of on board with the new philosophy. But David's kind of he's a little bit of a holdout of getting fully on board. And he's just taking batting practice. And it's the two of them leveling with each other. And there's a moment where he says, you're paying me like $8 million or whatever it is to play for you, and he's like, no, you got that wrong. I'm paying you $1 million. The Yankees are paying you $7 million to play against them. I think it's a good moment where he's really kind of trying to work the different angles to get people really on board with the philosophy.
Yeah, it condensed basically what they did in the spring training and before the season started, because David Justice said, yeah, that never happened. And I was like, yeah, man, they condensed it into 2 minutes instead of spending 2 hours of all the conversations you and Billy Beane actually had beforehand of you guys, coming together and having that conversation. So I think they did a really good job of that, and like just condensing that up, like especially like with the trades and stuff. Like it's all just like a lot of these things happened in different times, but they just put them into one scene together because we don't need 5 scenes of it like jumping around and confusing the audience. You can streamline it and put it through to make a more exciting story and have a good pace. Like this movie has excellent pace to it.
So guess what, David Justice? Aaron Sorkin's a good screenwriter. He knows what to do.
Yeah, so Sorkin with
that's why I think it's so easy to pick up and watch, because it's so tightly made, and that's probably why it's also such like a great like YouTube clip movie as well, because it's all these great sequences that are like they come together really well.
I love the movie in the beginning when like they go to like the scouting reports over and over again, the whole scouting team, and I kind of wish that they kept going with that, because those scenes were like almost like an interesting war room boardroom right there, where like they're going over. And I love the one scene where like he's talking about who he's target free agency, and they're all like, "You're out of your fucking mind! What's going on here? Have you lost a thing?" And then they have the one elderly dude that's like, he's our boss. We should listen to him. He has the final say, no matter what you guys say. We just give him opinions. Everyone else is like, oh, well, fuck you, Billy Bean.
And I love when he's just like, oh, I'm pointing at Pete.
Yeah.
His on-base percentage is 368.
Yeah.
And that's why we're getting him. We're getting the
They're all looking at Jonah Hill like, who's this fucking nerd in the
yeah,
corner?
why is this nerd in this room here?
Yeah. Who's this guy? Does he need to be here? And he's like, yes, he does, actually.
So this was directed by Bennett Miller, who has a background in documentary filmmaking, and I definitely feel like you could feel that in the style of this movie, that it's got a little bit of that like documentary feel to it, like especially when they're doing the compiling and like showing statistics and players, like it's all very visually interesting when you're just looking at a bunch of numbers on a spreadsheet.
Oh yeah, definitely like the intercepts of like the media, what they're saying at the time, that really helped like build context for this movie. I feel like this was a documentary style that wasn't overbearing, like the Steven Soderbergh version sounded like.
Yeah,
so,
no, and it's not overbearing, and it's like subtly done, but it gives it that like lens of authenticity as well onto it, that I think helps validify the story, even though it's not 100% accurate. It gives it, for an audience member, it gives you that trusting feel to it by interjecting the real clips of what happened and what what was Hollywoodized, if you will, for a better thing. I think quickly here we can talk about, and maybe this is just for Steve and I. Steve, how do you like advanced analytics in baseball?
I definitely think that it helps, but there is a lot. You can fall into a rabbit hole with them. You ever I believe it was Yogi Berra that said there's like 90% of all baseball is like skill, or the other 50% is luck. And I don't know if you're a mathematician like I am, but he said 90 and 50% on purpose. That's not just me fudging numbers here. So I mean, like you advanced to face. I baseball is very, very driven. And I mean, the perfect example is like when they almost blew that 11-0 lead, right? Like, I mean, like that's a tremendous lead in any fucking baseball game. You know what I mean? And like, how much are advanced analytics going to help you out when a team is going to be like, scoring like 11 runs in a half an inning just because they're going on a tear and they have that momentum behind them? You know what I mean? So I think it's important to kind of read into, but I don't think it should be a be all end all for any general manager or any team for that matter. So
yeah, I agree with you there. I think my other tangent to add on to it would be that advanced analytics does not prioritize batting average. It reduces its importance. And I disagree with that, because from a fan's perspective, and I believe the strength of baseball always has and always will be balls hit into the field of play. The game is actually exciting when things are going on, but it gets the perception of boring when it's a bunch of walks. Like, people don't want to watch guys get walked. Like, that's just not what people want to do. And baseball has struggled with attendance issues, pace of play, because now they're focused on these relievers using these analytics that throw really hard but can't throw a strike to save their life. And I think that's like, it's it's just not what the sport is about. It's like it's antithesis, and I think you can build a team doing that, and I think teams should be using these. Like, you'd be dumb not to be using these statistics. I just think from a fan perspective, and from like just a general fan watching the game, like me taking Tommy to a baseball game, he wants to watch hits. He wants to see a home run. He does not want to see a bunch of guys walking the bases and be like, Tim, this is what you spend your time watching? Are you out of your mind?
Yeah, baseball is a sport for me that I can never watch like on TV, but like, when you get to a ballpark, it's different because it's like, oh, I can get drunk outside. Fuck yeah, that's the main appeal of the ballpark.
But there is, but like to that point, Tommy, like there's a lot of downtime in baseball, and that's the time where you would be getting drunk and doing other things. You know what I mean? Whereas like me and fucking like Timmy over here would be like every single 3-2 count where the guy's throwing or like hitting another foul tip. We're sitting there like shaking our heads, going, "Come the fuck on! Like, get on base or don't!" Like, you know what I mean? And Tommy's just sitting in the corner, being like, "Yeah, like he's either gonna get on or he's not." Like,
whatever happens.
I get it, but like, there's there's a lot of time. Like, it's those moments that really kind of keep you invested.
Well, the thing with Moneyball, like its legacy of like the Billy Bean stuff or anything, is that this is now bled into other sports, like in basketball. That's why we see so many more teams taking three pointers over and over and over again. It's bled into everything. I wouldn't be shocked about football too.
It's blended into football. Paul Podesta, after his stint in the Oakland A's, went to the New York Mets. Did not do a great job there. Actually, he was involved in the 2015 team, but he then went on to the Cleveland Browns in 2016. And if you know anything about the 2016 to 2017 Cleveland Browns, they won one game. They won one game in 2 seasons, including an 0-16 season. So it did not, at that point in time, work for the Cleveland Browns, but they have a better team now than they did at that time. But I think it's time now.
Do you remember the first game they won, Timmy?
It was against the Jets.
You remember that?
Yeah, it was against the
Jets.
Yeah, do you remember how happy Browns fans were?
Yeah, they literally, Bud Light had a promotion of like free beer for the city when they finally won a game.
Dude, you think that they finally won the Super Bowl. The fridge. It was hysterical. It was hysterical.
Oh,
I was just like, what is going on in Cleveland? Oh, the Browns won a game.
And it was perfect because it was against the Jets, and that's just like that's how you just describe that team in one sentence, is losing to the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much. If there was ever 2 teams that had the worst luck ever, it's those 2.
I am a star. I'm a star, I'm a star, I'm a star. I am a big, bright, shining star.
All right, boys. Who's the star of this movie? Who gives the best performance? Mike, I'll kick it over to you. Who do you feel carried this movie?
I mean, I think you got to say Pitt, since he's in 99% of the scenes, and I think you could also argue that Jonah Hill's character, he does a great job too. But it's really, he's there so Brad Pitt can basically interface with somebody for the entire time, since all these conversations and debates aren't going on in his own head. I think, I don't know who else you could cast in that role as well. I'm sure there's some other people that could do it, but it feels like the role's like made for him in a way. He just does it with so much charisma and swagger and like embattled, if you will.
Yeah.
So I got to go with him.
Yeah. I'm going to echo your sentiments right there. I think Brad Pitt, obviously. I don't think there's a single scene in this movie that does not have Pitt.
No, it's his story. It's his story, and it's his perspective on the movie.
But even factor that out. I mean, obviously, there's sometimes where that's the case, but there's someone else that wants the movie. This isn't the case. I mean, it's a charming performance. He makes all like the mumbo jumbo, like acceptable and stuff like that. If this was a movie that was like Jonah Hill's character as a lead, it would have been more analytics heavy and more boring. But essentially, we have a guy who just carries us from the scene to scene with a very charming, great performance right here. So I'm going Pitt, obviously.
Yeah. No, I got to go with Pitt too. But it is important to note that I think about the trajectory of Jonah Hill's career when this movie came out. He really Superbad was only 4 years removed from this movie, and I think it was really Jonah Hill trying to get his feet wet with the dramatic role and really become a serious actor. So I think it needs to be mentioned that he did a good job in this otherwise sort of serious role, where he did have this funny anecdotes here and there. This is definitely more of his transition away from comedy and into more of a serious actor,
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It needs to be said that, and that you kind of jumped my point there, because it is Brad Pitt. It's very obviously Brad Pitt's the performance, but for Jonah Hill, this was the role that everybody went, oh, he can actually act. It's not just comedy. He can actually be in a serious movie, and you can take him seriously. And it changed that perspective, and then led to him getting into Wolf of Wall Street. This movie definitely had an impact on that casting decision, I would imagine, for Martin Scorsese.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, the difference is that the Wolf of Wall Street role you could see more for Jonah Hill because that's a very comedic performance. But like Jonah Hill in this one is not funny. I mean, he doesn't really make you laugh. It's other characters just like telling him, like, "Hey man," like the Brad Pitt snap scene. But that's not because Jonah Hill's being like funny or wacky or like his typical like comedic persona. This is very restrained, very reserved for him, which is uneasy. But like he makes it work.
Absolutely.
Are you ready, comedy partner? Waka.
All right, gentlemen. I think this sound drop is almost weird to play. Muppet time. Would Moneyball work as a Muppet adaptation? Tommy, what do you think?
I think no, but I think if you were to do it, it would just be Brad Pitt would be the same, but everyone else would be Muppets, and he'd be talking to these players. They're all Muppets. It's like, you guys think it's fun while losing, while they're doing like some Muppet dance, or like when I was on the speakers or something like that. You just have Jonah Hill played by who's like the big fucking Muppet.
I know who you're talking about. Snuffleupagus.
You mean Big Bird?
Jonah Hill's just played by Big Bird. No, that's not the guy. It's a fucking monster dude. I forget what his name is.
I know who you're talking about. I can't remember his
Snuffleupagus?
name off the hand. No, that's like no, it's I know who you're talking about, Tommy. I can't remember his name off my hand right now. But
Big monster. Sweetums.
Mike, Steve, would you guys like to see a Muppet adaptation of Moneyball?
I'm good on that, but
straight up no.
If you want to make one, go for it.
Yeah, I don't think I really need it per se. I think if they did do it, the guys in the balcony, they would do a good job playing like the old scouting team, if you will. With
yeah, not often.
His girlfriend is ugly.
Ugly. He has a girlfriend. You haven't had one in 7 years.
Yeah. I like to see
that.
I like to see the version of Brad Pitt as Kermit, and just instead he's doing the Kermit freak out. You guys think it's funny? Why do you But other than that, no, this movie would not work as a Muppet adaptation.
No, this movie would not work as a Muppet adaptation. It's a little too serious and it's a little too baseball-y for the Muppets, I think. Review time, guys. Give me your score out of 5. Tommy, I'm going to start with you here.
Yeah, so I'm not a baseball guy whatsoever. Usually I avoid it, to be honest. But this movie honestly brought over me in a way through his emotion, through his script, and through his performances right here. That even as a baseball fan, not as a baseball fan, I still like this movie. I thought it was really great performances. I'm gonna go 4 out of 5. This feels like a rewatchable. This feels like a great rainy day movie, and I'm very glad I watched it. So,
Mike,
I give this a 4.5 out of 5. I think it's got a lot of depth to it. I think it's just a tremendously well-made movie. I think it's got a small cast, but of the cast, I think everybody does a really fantastic job. And I think the screenwriting in it is really fantastic. I find it really, really rewatchable too. So for that reason, 4.5 out of 5 for me.
Steve?
Yeah, I would definitely give it a 4 out of 5. I mean, it's amazing for its time, has a rewatchability, gives you a very clear scope into the baseball general managing side of the business, and it had an interesting and compelling story as well that gave you that little snapshot of history. So I definitely think it's a great movie, and definitely slept on it for way too long. I'm surprised that it took me this long to see it. So.
Yep, I'm going to echo the sentiments of Tommy and Steve here. I'm going to also go 4 out of 5. It's a total rewatchable movie. Has that emotional core to get you invested into it. Just a lot of scenes that if you flip this on TNT and it's in the middle of the scouting scene, it's like, well, I'm watching this. Like I don't have a choice. It's one of those movies.
Yeah.
Just really great performances. Brad Pitt, it's an all-time Brad Pitt performance, and it's a great way of showing the transition of baseball from the 20th century into the 21st century. So 4 out of 5 for me. Mike and Steve, thank you guys for hopping on the podcast. A lot of fun having you both on. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Happy to be on.
Thanks for having us on. Really appreciate it. It's been a great time.
And Tommy, any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Well, as upstairs Steve says, you can't text and drive, but you sure can podcast and drive.
You goddamn right. And now I'm in Boston. Isn't that amazing?
Did you make your destination?
I'm 10 minutes away. You know, most people listen to podcasts while they drive. Bitch, I make podcasts while I drive because that's what separates me from the rest of them.
I love if we just hear you again like an accident right now. Right? I forgot to say that. Like, oh God!
And then Tommy has to make
Steve, are you okay?
Tommy has to make an unfortunate post. Yeah, we cannot post our episode of Moneyball.
Upstairs Steve tragically passed away while podcasting.
Due to carelessness on our guest's part, we are now we're now being sued for replacements of a new dog. And our Moneyball episode is ruined.
We'll post our Moneyball episode on Live Leak instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You got the fucking ASPCA fucking banging on our door. Hey, we need restitution here.
Your union, Steve?
Who? What's that?
I said your union.
Me personally, no, I am not.
No, I meant in the podcast. It was a joke.
I don't know. You tell me, man. It's your podcast.
No, definitely not. And I assume there is no podcast union whatsoever.
Probably not.
Might be the time to start one. I don't know.
Might be the time. Might be the time with the screen actors and the writers. We'll podcast
we'll start the podcast union.
Band together, get health insurance.
The Pod Actors Guild, the PAG.
Pad. I like it. I like it.
It all works right there. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. You can follow us on social media at Seen It Pod. That's on Instagram, Twitter, which is X now, I guess, and then Threads. And
why do you still plug Threads, Tommy?
Because I still post on Threads occasionally.
What about Mike Beck? You got it? You got any social media plugs that you want to throw in there?
For me, just follow me on my Instagram if you were.
Absolutely, that's exactly what I was going to say. Took the words right out of my mouth. That would be big_mooch 821. Drop the 420. You know, blaze it. What do you got?
I love that you're cutting out right here while you're.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect.
You just,
am I cutting out?
Cutting out right as you drop your Instagram handle.
Well, it's big_mooch 821. Everybody already knows it because they know that I'm the most valued member on this podcast. What do you hear? What do you say? What do you got here, Mike Beck? What are your Instagram threads? What do you got?
MJ Beck 92. Drop
all
me
right,
a follow, guys.
Any underscores? Is it M_?
No underscores. I got on at a time that I didn't have to resort to underscores.
Oh wow!
Shots fired.
Calling you out.
Shots fired. I love it.
Wow.
Leave us a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And next month is spooky season. We're kicking it off with Saw. Timmy's never seen it, and I can't wait.
I haven't seen any of these movies, so it's top.
He's never seen Saw. You see that?
Have you saw it?
I haven't saw it.
Have you ever seen Saw? Yeah, I've seen Saw. That's gonna be one of those misconceptions you're gonna say a lot.
So thank you all so much for listening. Appreciate it. We will see you next week.
Saw you next week.
Waka waka.